2020 Daily Grind champion. Farm Truckin' Nation put this race on. It was the best time I've had, hands down.
Someone cost him more than just a race, and for years, Dave Comstock refused to say a word about it. Not on camera or off it. In a scene where people call each other out over everything, that kind of silence stood out. This is a man who's survived brutal crashes, built some of the fastest cars on the 405, and fought his way to the top.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Daddy Dave, Street Outlaws.
But this situation, he left it alone. Until now. So, who pushed things so far that he stayed quiet all this time? And what changed that made him finally speak? Join us as we uncover the name Daddy Dave, revealed as the most evil person he has worked with. Before the cameras, before the fame. To understand what Daddy Dave has been through, let's go back before Street Outlaws became a show, when it was just a group of guys in Oklahoma City with fast cars and nowhere legal to race them. Dave Comstock grew up in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and the cars were always there. Not as a hobby or a weekend thing, but as the actual substance of his life. By the time most people his age were figuring out what they wanted to do, Dave already knew. He was going to race. He was going to build cars. He was going to be the fastest man on the street. His first real car on the 405 streets was a 1996 GMC Sonoma pickup truck that most people would have looked at and immediately dismissed. It was not the kind of machine people associate with top 10 street racing. But Dave had built it, tuned it, and learned it so well that he was running it against cars with bigger engines and bigger reputations and beating them. The thing nobody says about the 405 racing world in the early days is how cutthroat it actually was. These were not gentlemen racers, with everything to gain and nothing to lose. These were men who had put everything they had into their machines, whose reputations lived or died on race night, and who would do almost anything to win. Dave thrived in that environment because he was wired for it. He did not just want to win, he needed to win. And that need put him in the path of people who needed it just as badly, and had far fewer scruples about how they got there. By 2009, Dave's skills had taken him all the way to Speed TV's show Pinks, where racers put their cars on the line in winner-take-all competitions. He showed up, he competed, and he made a name for himself in a world that was about to get much, much bigger. When Discovery Channel came knocking a few years later with a show called Street Outlaws, Dave was ready. He had been ready for 30 years. The cameras and audience arrived, and so did the people who were going to make the next chapter of his life considerably more complicated than anyone watching on television would ever fully understand. 30 years of racing and a television show that put him in front of millions of people. Everything Daddy Dave had worked for was finally paying off. So why, in the middle of all of it, did someone try to tear it all down?
Door-to-door race!
The #1 spot and the target it painted. When Street Outlaws premiered, Daddy Dave was already holding down the top position on the Oklahoma City list. Not because the show gave it to him, because he had earned it the hard way, one race at a time, against everyone who thought they could take it from him. That #1 spot was not just a ranking. In the 405 world, it was a way of life. It meant that every single person with a fast car and a grudge was coming for you. Every week. Every race night. You were the target, and you had to be ready for anything. What the cameras caught was the racing. What the cameras did not catch was everything that happened in the margins. The conversations in garages after dark. The whisper campaigns about someone's car not being legal. The calculated decisions about who to back and who to cross. In a world where reputation is the only currency that matters, the knives come out in ways that are quiet and deliberate and much harder to defend against than a direct challenge on the street. Dave experienced all of it. He watched people he thought were on his side work against him the moment they thought it would benefit them. He watched alliances form and dissolve based on nothing but who was currently winning and who needed help taking down the winner. And he sat on what he knew, the way men from Oklahoma who have been racing since before reality television existed tend to sit on things, quietly, until the right moment to say it. The Street Outlaws list structure created a specific kind of pressure that outsiders never fully grasped. You did not just have to race well, you had to race smart. You had to know who was coming for your spot, who was sandbagging to get a favorable matchup, and who was feeding information about your car to your next opponent. It was chess at 200 miles per hour. And the person Daddy Dave eventually identified as the most evil he ever worked with was not someone who beat him in a fair race. It was someone who played the game in ways that had nothing to do with being fast. Every racer on the list had rivals. Every racer had haters. But there is a difference between someone who wants to beat you and someone who wants to destroy you. What Daddy Dave eventually revealed was that one person in his world had crossed that line in ways that left marks that are still visible today. The crash at Amarillo and who was really there. In 2015, Daddy Dave was at the Amarillo Dragway in Texas for a no-prep race night. No prep means exactly what it sounds like. No preparation of the track surface, no traction compound sprayed on the starting line, just raw asphalt and whatever grip your tires can find. It is the most dangerous way to drag race because the margin for error on the launch is almost non-existent. One bad moment at the hit, and the car goes sideways, and sideways at 200 miles per hour on a surface with no grip is where the nightmare begins. That is exactly what happened to Daddy Dave. His car went sideways, left the racing surface, and rolled 6 times. 6 times. The kind of crash that racetracks build roll cages and kill switches, specifically to survive. Dave's car was doing what it was built to do as it tumbled down the track, and Dave was inside it. When it finally stopped, the crew got to him. He had a concussion, a bruised lung, cuts, and bruises across his body. He was taken to the hospital. His wife, Cassie, went to his Facebook immediately to tell his fans he was alive. What came out later, in conversations that Dave has had with people inside the 405 community in the years since, was the detail that made the crash worse than the crash itself. Not everyone who was there that night was sorry about what happened. Not everyone in that world was rooting for Dave to walk out of that hospital. In the hours after the crash, while Dave was recovering, people who identified as part of the 405 family were already talking about what his absence would mean for the list. Who was going to move up? What his car situation looked like now? Whether this was the end of Daddy Dave at the top? The racing world does not stop because someone got hurt, and for some people, it does not even slow down. Unfortunately, the Amarillo crash was not the most dangerous thing that happened to Daddy Dave on his journey through Street Outlaws, because the second crash, the one in 2021, happened in a completely different context and revealed something about who his real enemies were. Goliath, the second crash, and the comeback nobody expected. After the Amarillo crash ended his run with the Sonoma, Dave went looking for something new. What he found was a 1963 Chevy Nova that he would turn into one of the most recognized cars in Street Outlaws history. He named it Goliath. He built it from almost nothing into a twin turbocharged monster that produced power numbers that made other 405 racers physically uncomfortable. The build was documented across multiple seasons of the show, and the finished product was a machine that looked like it belonged in a fever dream and performed like something even worse. Then, in 2021, Dave was back on a track in South Georgia when it happened again. The car went sideways a second time, a second crash, a second set of injuries, another trip to the hospital with Dave Comstock inside a crumpled race car, wondering if this was the one that finished him for good. His crew got to him. He survived. Again. And the community's response this time was different from what it had been in 2015, because by 2021, people had seen enough of Dave's comeback story to understand that this man did not stay down. The version of Goliath that emerged from that crash and the rebuild that followed it was even more extreme than the original. Dave presented Goliath 2.0 at SEMA in 2022 with a supercharged 3,500 horsepower XRE Hemi, topped with a Pro Charger, fitted into a custom Audi S5 body that nobody on the 405 had seen coming. The reveal stopped the floor. People who build fast cars for a living walked up to this thing and went quiet, which is the highest possible compliment in that world. The Audi body on a purpose-built race platform was not something anyone had done at that level before, and the combination of the visual and the performance numbers made it immediately clear that Dave had not just rebuilt his car, he had rebuilt his entire approach. To everyone in that world who had watched him crash twice and decided his story was over, it was not over. It had barely started. And the person who had done the most to make him feel like it was over was about to find out exactly what Daddy Dave was capable of when someone gave him a real reason to be angry. But the most evil person Dave ever worked with was not someone who put him in a crash. It was someone who operated in the spaces that cameras cannot reach. What exactly did Daddy Dave reveal? And why is the Street Outlaws community reacting the way it is?
Daddy Dave, baby!
What Daddy Dave finally said. Dave Comstock does not do long speeches or sit down for emotional interviews where he lays out everything he has been carrying. He is a racer who was taught that you solve your problems on the track and you keep your personal business personal. That is how he has operated for 30 years. So when he finally started talking about the person who had done him the most damage during his time on Street Outlaws, the community paid attention in a way it rarely does to drama that didn't happen at racing speed. What Dave described was not a single incident. It was a pattern. A pattern of someone who smiled in his face and worked against him the moment he turned around. Someone who used the information Dave shared in what he thought were private conversations and fed it to his competitors. Someone who manipulated the way races were set up to consistently put Dave in unfavorable matchups. Someone who, when the cameras were rolling, performed the friendship that the show needed to function. And then, when the cameras stopped, did everything in their power to make sure Dave's position on the list was harder to hold. This person knew how the 405 world operated. They knew what information was valuable. They knew exactly which conversations to listen to and which details to extract. And they were patient about it. They did not move fast or obviously. They moved the way slow poison moves, invisibly, over time, in amounts too small to notice until the damage is already done. Dave eventually discovered that someone he had considered part of his inner circle had been collecting that information and using it to cost him races, his ranking, and ultimately the #1 spot he had worked 30 years to earn. The moment he confronted this person, Dave described the reaction as revealing in itself. Not denial or anger, but a smile. This kind of smile only happens when someone has been caught and knows they have been caught and is not afraid of it. Someone who had calculated that the relationship was more valuable as a tool than as a genuine connection, and who had been treating it that way from the beginning. Dave said that was the moment he understood that some people in this world do not compete against you on the track. They compete against you in your own garage. And the ones who do it that way are the ones you never see coming until the damage is already done. The confrontation happened. The truth came out. But Daddy Dave is not someone who walks away from a problem. He is someone who builds a better car and comes back faster. So what happened after he found out who had been working against him? And what does the Street Outlaws world look like from his side of it in 2025? Comstock's auto service and life beyond the drama. While all of this was happening on and off camera, Dave Comstock was running a real business. Comstock's auto service in the 405 area has been his base of operations through the entire run of Street Outlaws and remains where he does the actual work that makes everything else possible. He is not just a television personality who races on weekends. He is a professional mechanic and engine builder who has been turning wrenches since before most of his fans were old enough to drive. The shop is where the cars get built. It is where the problems get solved. And it is where Dave processes what happens in his life. Because some people process through talking, and some through building. And Dave has always been the second kind. His wife, Cassie, has been alongside him through everything. The Amarillo crash, the South Georgia crash, the politics of the list. The person who was working against him while pretending to work with him. Cassie Comstock is not a television personality and has never tried to be. She is the woman who posted to Dave's Facebook at 2 in the morning from a hospital waiting room in Texas to tell his fans he was alive, who has driven to race venues across the country to watch her husband put himself in a machine that could kill him, and who has been the fixed point in a life that has been anything but fixed. They have 2 daughters together. Dave talks about racing constantly and talks about his family almost never, which in the world he comes from is the highest possible expression of how much they mean to him. The people who know Dave best say, Cassie is the reason he came back from both crashes. Not the cars, not the competition. Her. The Street Outlaws world in 2025 is a different place from what it was when the show started. Big Chief has left the franchise over disagreements with how the production dramatized the relationships between racers. Murder Nova has stepped back to prioritize his family. The list that once drove every conversation on the show has been complicated by spin-offs, rule changes, and the ongoing tension between what makes good television and what makes good racing. Dave has watched it all happen, navigated it all, and is still standing, still racing, still building cars that make people stop what they are doing and stare. He has survived everything the track and the world around it could throw at him. He has identified the most evil person he has ever worked with and addressed it on his own terms. He has rebuilt his car twice and come back stronger both times. He learned that lesson. He absorbed it. He built the lesson into how he operates. And the person who tried to use the trust he extended against him is now watching Daddy Dave run a 3,500 horsepower Audi-bodied Nova that stops conversations every time it pulls into a race venue. The best revenge, Dave Comstock has said, is showing up faster than you were before. He has been doing exactly that. He intends to keep doing it. and the most evil person he ever worked with? They know exactly who they are, and they have to live with what they did. Dave gets to live with what he built. Do you think Dave should name the person publicly, or does keeping it vague make it more powerful? And who do you think it actually was? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.